Thanks, Zena. Thank you. I'm even in a mic right now, and yours was more effective. So thank you. We're gonna go ahead and get started. My name is Clancy Nixon. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist for the City of Durango. Welcome to the Engage Durango Forum. This is our 4th one ever, so thanks for being here. Before we get too far into the program this evening, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Miss Olivia over here. Come on over, and she can kind of tell you a little bit about her role tonight. So.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good evening, everybody. I am Olivia de Pablo, and I am here to do interpretation for those who might need it. Before I do that, I would like to create a small statement about language justice. First, I want to thank you, the City of Durango, and all of you for opening spaces to be able to have access to language resources and multilingual spaces. As you know, the demographics are changing, and now we have a lot of people in this community that may not speak English, and the City of Durango has been able to access and open the spaces to access linguistic resources. So if anybody today needs an interpretation, please let me know, raise your hand, and I'll be happy to provide you with equipment so I can do interpretation from English to Spanish. Muchas gracias por esta noche, estoy muy agradecida, soy Olivia de Pablo y estoy muy agradecida con la ciudad de Durango porque podemos finalmente abrir espacios multilingües y poder hablar el idioma del corazón. Gracias.
Thank you, Olivia.
Okay, and then we also have childcare available. It doesn't seem like anybody in the room needs that at this point in time. But at each of these forums, we're also doing free childcare. So if you know somebody who didn't come tonight because they had the kiddos at home, just know that that's taking place back in the children's library section. Food and drinks, they're on the back table, so feel free to help yourself. Lots to eat back there. I don't like taking that back home, so eat up, please. And then the format for the evening, we're going to go into a presentation here pretty soon with Tony Vicari, our aviation director over at Durango-La Plata Airport, about the new airport developments. Following his presentation, he'll do about 10 minutes. That's about a 10-minute presentation, about a 10-minute allotment for question and answers with Tony regarding his presentation. And then from there, we're going to do a breakout session where you can go mill about the room and meet our departmental directors. We'll do an introduction after the Q&A of everybody who's in the room who's city staff. So you can feel free to wander around and learn about projects and programs that are going on with the city for the rest of the evening. Before we do that, I do want to highlight a few ways that you can provide your input to the city. So we have a new engagement website. It's called Engage Durango. Who's laid eyes on it yet? So it's engage.durangoco.gov. It's a great tool for a lot of these projects that you'll hear about tonight to provide your feedback if you don't want to show up to a meeting, say, and instead want to stay behind the computer screen. You can do it that way. But it's a great tool for us to be able to listen to you instead of just being in person. So check that out. We also have strategic planning focus groups happening next week. So if you haven't seen our emails going out about that, we're asking for focus groups or folks to participate in focus groups surrounding like resident feedback, business owners, community organization leaders, and utility customers. So if any of those applies to you and you would like to sit in on a focus group, we are doing that third party. So, you know, nobody with the city actually is going to be sitting in and hearing that feedback, but we do get that summary, and that helps guide our strategic planning as we're revamping that strategic plan. So we would love to hear from you. And then we also have boards and commissions vacancies, which Faye in the back, our clerk there, she will tell you all about, and you can also check that out on the Engage Durango website. In addition, we have some upcoming events. So next week on the 3rd, we have our police chief candidates kind of town hall. So you can, if you're interested in meeting the 5 candidates the top candidates for the new police chief, join us for that. It's from 5:30 to 7:30 at City Hall. The first hour will be just a general casual meet and greet, and then the second hour from 6:30 to 7:30 will be the moderated town hall where we're asking questions in a very public space. So if you would like to submit questions, you can do that on the Engage Durango site as well. They just need to come to us there's a deadline of noon on April 2nd. Let's see. And then on the 30th of April, we're doing the police department and city hall project. We're presenting the interior concept for that project that's going to be at the historic high school building. So if you're interested in joining us, it'll be right here at the library, 5:30 to 7:30 on the 30th. Okay. Yes?
Who makes the decision on hiring the police chief?
That's a good question for this man right here.
Jose Vanderbilt, city manager, that would be me, but it does have to be confirmed by the city council.
Great question. Okay, Tony, come on up. We would love to have you and learn about the airport developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Clancy. I'm Tony Vicari, the aviation director at the Durango-La Plata County Airport. I'm going to provide a short presentation focusing on terminal development at the airport. So quickly just starting here on project background, the easiest way to look at this, of course, is looking at the long-term growth of passenger traffic at the airport. As you can see on the chart on the right, our passenger traffic has more than doubled over the last 2 decades. And since then, we've only seen limited terminal expansion. The current terminal was constructed in 1988, and the additional square footage added to it is primarily in the form of a temporary tent structure, where our American Airlines boarding gates are today, for those that are familiar. That actually makes up more than half of our post-TSA space that's usable today. That's not a functional long-term plan for us to bank on temporary space being able to support growing airport operations over the long term, especially when that tent has already been in place for 11 years at this point, well into its usable service life. Additionally, we're seeing a lot of evolutions and changes, as we always do, in the aviation industry and airline industry in particular. We're seeing a lot of upgauging, which is the utilization of larger aircraft to serve markets. Today, we're seeing frequent use or flights on 126 to 150 seat aircraft, up from the average of 50 to 70 seat aircraft we saw only 5 to 7 years ago. So continuing to see not just overall increase in passenger traffic, but increased individual surge events as we see larger aircraft fly into the environment. So consequently, we've developed a long-term vision for expanding the airport terminal, which you can see depicted here. The kind of heavy-set red line you see is the current infrastructure at the airport at the terminal, and everything outside that represents future new build. This was developed out of a terminal area plan that was updated in 2019 and ultimately approved through the Durango City Council and Board of County Commissioners. Once that long-term vision was outlined, we established a series of project phases to deliver this. So that outline you just saw is indeed a long-term build-out of the airport terminal, not something that we're going to be able to deliver overnight. We look to break that down into feasible and functional phases that the airport could fund through its own revenue streams without relying on city or county tax dollar infusions for the airport. So what that resulted in is 2 primarily initial phases of construction. The first being phase 1A, and then the second being phase 1B. Phase 1A actually broke ground in April of 2023, so just about a year ago, and we actually have a ribbon cutting scheduled for April 10th, so just a couple of weeks from now, to open that new space. Very excited about that. And then phase 1B will be coming right on the heels of this project. We just wrapped up design in 2023, and we're currently finalizing construction agreements with our contractor with the intention of breaking ground later this summer. Quick rundown on these 2 phases. Terminal project phase 1A, as I mentioned, is about to open here in a handful of weeks. This is a smaller, more targeted project. It adds 1 airline boarding gate immediately north and adjacent of the existing United Airlines boarding gate, for those that are familiar. Brand new public restrooms, a new food and beverage concession space, and then renovations to our existing restrooms, which will replace them with 2 family restrooms and a mother's nursing room. Here you can see a few construction photos that have been underway over the last year, getting a sense of how that space is coming together. which will lead us into Phase 1B, which is a substantially larger and more impactful project. And we're very excited about this. As I mentioned, we wrapped up design in 2023 and currently finalizing construction agreements, hoping to break ground later this summer. On this map, you can see a list of bullet points of the various impacts of this. It is a very sweeping project. On the map on the right, the heaviest colors to the right all represent new construction. This will be about 20,000 square feet of added new construction to the building. And then the various shades of gray in the middle of the diagram to the existing infrastructure represent renovations of the interior spaces today, which is about another 20,000 square feet of significant renovation through the building. Overall, a couple of big impacts this will have is completely moving the TSA screening checkpoint to a brand new location, allowing for a straight line linear screening checkpoint as opposed to the Z format it is today, which was sandwiched into the building post 9/11 when TSA came about. We'll also be greatly expanding our airline boarding gates, allowing us to continue to welcome additional airlines into the market as market demand dictates. We'll be right-sizing public restrooms throughout the entire building, building out new landside and airside food and beverage concessions into new centralized locations that allow for better platform to serve our customers as well. We also have numerous ADA impacts throughout the terminal. The entire building will be built obviously to be current and up to ADA code. We also have numerous family restrooms, as I mentioned, a mother's nursing room, and accessible public restrooms throughout the building, which we're excited to be able to deliver. Next, I have just a series of slides showing some renderings of the facility as it continues to grow. Here you can see some of the exterior shots with big sweeping glass views out onto the airside apron, a new hard terrazzo concourse floor, and the post-screening gate areas. An extension of our existing landside infrastructure, new food and beverage concessions on the left and adjacent to a new airline boarding gate. Elevated, you can see the wood ceilings and large windows intended to bring a lot of natural light into the facility, which it currently lacks, with more low-slung ceilings and less exterior lighting. The brand new TSA screening checkpoint you can see here, again, more open, inviting, high ceilings, should make for a much better experience for passengers and allow the TSA to continue to accommodate large slugs of passengers moving through the terminal. And additional renderings showing some of the architecture throughout the building. So just quick touching on funding. It should be reminded to everyone that the airport operates as an enterprise fund of the city of Durango, meaning that the airport is financially self-sustaining. There's no city or county tax dollars used at the airport for operations or capital projects. And this particular project of the terminal is no different than that. Overall, the project is being funded in a way through various phases that can be done incrementally that are supported through the revenue streams of the airport, both in terms of available grant funding that we have access to through the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as CDOT Aeronautics, as well as retained earnings of the airport that we earn on operating revenues at the airport from fees and charges assessed to users of the airport. So all told, you can see the project costs are just shy of $40 million between Phase 1A, Phase 1B, inclusive of design and construction. So it's a sizable project overall, but we're very pleased to be able to deliver this with a heavy amount of FAA grant funding associated with it, and then the remainder being solely funded through the airport's cash funding and airport issued financing, all backed by airport revenues. Again, no city or county tax dollars associated with the project. And lastly, just to wrap up, quick overview on community engagement throughout this process. This kicked off in March of 2022 with a public open house. At the time, that was reviewing initial concept designs. We accepted a lot of public feedback that ultimately was used by our design review committee and airport commission, and ultimately adopted by the city council and board of county commissioners, providing us with a firm direction on concept design. As I mentioned, we did establish a design review committee that was made up of numerous individuals in the community through a variety of backgrounds. It helped us to ensure that we brought a community presence and design thought into this project. We hold monthly airport advisory commission meetings. Those have been held throughout the duration of this project and are in perpetuity. Almost every one of those meetings has included some sort of topic associated with this project, given the large nature at the airport. Of course, there are city council and county commission meetings throughout the stages here. We've had various approval points through both of those governing bodies, since the airport is co-owned by the city and the county. We've also been in touch with the Southern Ute Tribal Council. I've updated them at 4 different points throughout this project. You can see those listed in bullet points. The Tribal Council has been very involved and actually also electing or appointing one of their tribal councilors to sit on our design review committee throughout the entire process, which we were happy to bring their feedback into this process. We have an online project website and feedback form that remains online on flydurango.com, where we accepted public feedback throughout the process and still do. And also not really community engagement per se, but we will, for anyone who knows artists in the community, we're looking in phase 1B in particular to bring in a lot of community art into various locations within the building, trying to continue to tie the facility to our region as a whole in more than just architecture. So look for that in the coming year. And then lastly, you can see our contact information down and to the right for any ongoing feedback you may have for the airport, this project or otherwise. With that, that's my quick overview. Happy to take Q&As. We got about 10 minutes here for any questions you may have. And then if we run over or you have more specific detailed questions, I'll be in the back and you can certainly talk to me after the main session here.
It looks like the design with the sloping roofs, you're also going to be able to put solar panels on. What's the plan for that?
Yeah, you're totally correct. So that was both an architectural feature that our design review committee and airport commission wanted to pursue in terms of mimicking some of the mountainous scenery, obviously, and topography of the area, but that was also heavily influenced by what you mentioned, which is being able to utilize those slanted roofs, which are very optimally oriented to the southeast, to be able to capture photovoltaic on those roof lines. So in phase 1B, you'll see all of those canted roof lines will have solar PV on them.
Tony Jasper Welch. Could you comment a little bit on parking? I know that the airport's been busier and busier, and parking's been a little bit challenging. Some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, great question. So asking about airport parking. So today we have about 1,000 parking spaces in total. Of that, about 600 are paved, about 400 are unpaved overflow spaces effectively. We have several projects here to address parking because it is an important aspect. We can update the building all we want, but if we can't park the cars, then it becomes an issue, obviously. So actually, we have recently bid and awarded a project to pave, for those that are familiar with our current upper overflow lot and our credit card lot, that's just south of the airport terminal. That is currently an unpaved lot and has been through the entirety of the airport. That'll be actually under construction starting in May of this year, so just about 2 months from now. About 2 months of closure, and we'll be adding about 280 paved parking spaces overall. So that does replace a lot of unpaved spaces, but we're actually moving the fence line to add some additional parking, and we'll add a significant level of service with obviously paved spaces, markings, and lighting for the first time. And we're also under design on what we call the next phase of our landside expansion, which will be an incremental expansion of our main parking lot. That scope is still under development, but we have construction dollars scheduled in our CIP for next year in 2025 to construct that. So we're aggressively moving on parking between those two projects. We anticipate being able to add in the range of 300-ish spaces overall to the airport.
Do you know about how many carbon emissions or any type of environmental factors or air pollutants would come from those construction of this and how you might mitigate it?
So the question was around environmental impacts of the construction primarily, right? Yeah, so I guess first off, I don't immediately have that answer until we haven't calculated the specific impacts of the construction activities themselves. We do, as a department of the city, work within their sustainability programs on that front and follow some of the same sustainability goals of the city. So it's something we work with them closely. We just participated in their greenhouse gas emissions survey update, and I believe there'll be a public unveiling of that fairly soon on that front. But I don't immediately have the answer as to what the construction impacts will be. These impacts are relatively localized on that sense. They're all on-site construction and not looking at since it's primarily facility construction, we don't see a lot of heavy vehicle operation associated with it. It tends to be more on-ground labor impacts.
If there's a phase 1A and phase 1B, what's planned in phase 2?
Great question. So phase 2, which is also actually brought through to a concept level for us, envisions an additional expansion to the north of our building. You can kind of get a sense of it if I go way back to the beginning here of some of the long-term vision. This diagram doesn't do a great job. You can see the existing heavy-set red line. That's today's terminal. Phase 1, by the time we're done with phase 1B, the TSA screening lanes on the kind of middle right will be built out, and that first baggage claim unit in the top right will be built out. The phase 2 program calls for us to primarily focus on baggage claim, which would be the addition of the second carousel and the movement of the rental car offices to the far north. It's the top right corner of that diagram effectively on that front. That's forecasting future demand, so it's a little bit nebulous in terms of where the specific growth demand will be. One of the big wins of coming out of this project, once we're done with 1A and 1B, is we now have a very linear structure both on our air side and our land side, and we can incrementally expand as needed where we see those pressures. So it allows us to either add airline gates to the north, as you can see kind of on the bottom right side of that diagram, or add baggage claim and rental car space to the top right if the demands or pressures are there. So, but initially phase 2 is planned to focus on an additional baggage claim and rental car expansion.
Tony, one other question. I know that United is flying some of the bigger planes in, some of the other airlines may. Can you talk about to have a jet bridge or to not have a jet bridge and the pros and cons and what you're looking at from the airport development?
Yeah, really good question. So I think for those that are familiar with the airport, you know today we do not have jet bridges in environment. We're solely a ground boarding airport. As you probably noticed in the various diagrams in phase 1A and with phase 1B, we're intending to keep that condition. We do not have jet bridges planned in either of those 2 phases of expansion. That's a couple of reasons there. First and foremost, when we initiated the concept level design on this with the community, we heard pretty strongly from our design review committee, our initial public open houses, as well as just users of the airport, that the ground boarding experience was kind of representative of our community in the sense of being able to be outside, get the fresh air when you first step out into Durango as a visitor, get a view of the topography and mountains outside you on that front. And we also heard from our airlines that it wasn't a huge demand for them on that front. The airlines are able to board large aircraft as we see today, with United flying Airbus C319 and 320 equipment using mobile boarding bridges, and they're also far more cost effective, which gets into the other side of things. From an airport perspective, jet bridges are exceedingly expensive. Single jet bridge is $1.5 million, give or take, just to put the single jet bridge in, and that's not considering long-term maintenance and operations costs associated with it. As the airport does continue to grow, it is likely that we would see jet bridges in future layers of expansion as we continue to grow. You can see one depicted here in a potential phase 2 type of expansion. So it's quite possible we get there, but when we were looking at breaking this into phases of projects, we just couldn't figure out how to fund jet bridges in these first 2 phases of expansion without cutting other key things that we needed to figure out first that were really growth limiters, and not even growth limiters, but just getting to the stage that we needed to be today. So long story short, we feel that we still like the charm of being able to board and in-plane and deplane on the ramp. It is fairly uncommon nationwide, but not uncommon necessarily in the West, where we have more favorable weather conditions on an annualized basis, lots of sunshine, less ice, things of that nature. You see it in iconic places like Jackson Hole, for example, exclusively a ground boarding environment where you're really embracing the natural scenery around you.
Thank you.
What happens to the American Airlines tent?
Good question also, yeah. The much beloved tent. So American Airlines will be staying in the tent for now. Once phase 1A is complete, United is actually just going to slide over 1 gate position from their current location, and American is going to stay in the tent while 1B is constructed. Once 1B is constructed, American will move out of the tent and into the permanent infrastructure of the terminal, into part of our new build area. So at that point, we would anticipate the tent essentially being vacant. At that point, the airport has some choices. And a lot of this will be predicated by what we've seen in terms of demand conditions at the airport. If we're in a situation where we've seen aggressive growth and demand and we've had new airline entrants, there's a chance that the tent, if it's still a functional, usable space, would actually remain online and become flex space for us to be able to utilize. Or if we have not seen as much aggressive growth and our builds through 1B have well contained that capacity, there's also a chance that the tent has essentially met its service life and will be demoed, and that space will be opened up for future potential expansion on the permanent front. So it's a bit of a flex space, but the intention is to move American out of there once 1B is completed.
Can you assure us that your funding sources will remain as you have presented, or do you have plans for another ballot attempt?
Yeah, no, good question. I can't guarantee you that every one of those dollars wouldn't change a little bit within the allocation there, but I can tell you that the airport is firm in its intent to not utilize city or county taxpayer dollars associated with this. If there were to be any changes, it would just be additional funding coming from the airport itself or additional grant funding coming into the project. For those who've been in the community for a number of years, you know that in 2016 there was a ballot initiative that was brought forth to the public seeking a property tax mill levy increase to support terminal expansion on a different project that was also terminal related, but different location, different scope. The community was not in favor of that, and the airport heard that loud and clear. And really what we took away from that, as well as the elected officials of the city and county really heard as a result of that, was not that people didn't want the airport to continue to grow and serve our community. There just was not a willingness to prioritize it over other infrastructure projects in the community for city or county taxpayer funding. So that really led to a re-envisioning of our overall plan, which brings forth this, which is an incremental development strategy that we can take in bite-sized chunks and fund through airport revenue streams without asking for obligation for city or county taxpayers. So short answer is we have no intention of asking for city or county tax requests through any kind of ballot measure. Yeah.
You guys have purchased some land east of the airport at one point, I thought. In an earlier rendering of these changes, you were going to be pushing some parking and that sort of stuff that direction. Is that on the plan?
Yeah, so in 2019, the airport bought about 12 acres of land. It's sort of northeast kind of the airport terminal along County Road 309, which enters into the airport. That was bought as a strategic pressure relief valve on the overall terminal complex and allow us to kind of really re-envision how we're going to do this. As it sits on our airport layout plan, which shows future growth, you're correct. Right now, long term, it shows us expanding parking into that zone and reorienting some county roads. That is a long-term development strategy for us. So what that really was kind of a strategic land banking for us to buy at the time when a parcel was available through a commercial sale, a piece of land that would allow us to envision how we could accommodate long-term sprawl of parking, knowing that it was probably 15 to 20 years down the road before we would ever actually jump into that zone. So we do own that. There's commercial buildings sitting on it, and we lease those out to commercial entities to operate in it. And in the future, we'd envision it as parking expansion. Might have time for one or two more questions, and then we're probably about at our time limit, I'm guessing. All right. Well, if that's the case, thank you for your time today. If you have additional questions for me, I'll be in the back along with the other directors to answer further questions.
Great. Thank you, Tony. And thanks for all those really great questions. Before we break out into the table sessions, I just want to remind you all that we have QR codes set up at each table to fill out a survey and let us know how we did for the Engage Durango Forum. It really means a lot to us hearing from you and how you felt like this evening went. And if you feel like we need to make any changes to our format, like I said, this is only the fourth time we've done this, so we are all ears regarding the format and how your experience was tonight. So please just take 5 minutes to just scan that QR code, fill it out, let us know how you feel about it. And with that, we're going to go around the room very quickly to each departmental table. They're going to introduce themselves, and they're going to speak up, hopefully, instead of passing the mic, and tell you a little bit about what's going on in each department, so you have a talking point if you'd like to go over and visit with them. So we'll start right here.
Jose Madrigal.
Yeah.
Jose Madrigal, City Manager's Office, and City Manager. So pretty much all general questions that you have about the city, be happy to answer.
Hi, Devin Schmidt, Chief Financial Officer for the City of Durango. We are currently in the middle of our annual comprehensive financial report. We do have a QR code here as well for you to check out our 2024 budget that updates every single night for the actuals versus the budget. So happy to chat with you about either of those items.
I'm Erin Hyder, Assistant City Manager with the City Manager's Office, and I'll be floating around and happy to chat about any general questions you have or point you in the right direction.
I'm just taking photos. My name's Tom. Luke Albie Henderson, I'm the library director. My shirt actually works as a QR code. If you have any questions about the library, I'm happy to answer them. The story for us is, if you look at our yearly update, unparalleled growth in library services. We're very excited about that, and we see that continuing into the new year.
Tony McCary, Airport Director. You just heard everything from me, so I think I'll pass it to Scott.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Scott Shine, Community Development Director. I would love to talk to you about economic development efforts, housing, and how we make sure Durango stays a great place to live as we grow. Thanks.
Dave Woodruff, Durango City Councilor, and I'm just here for the free candy.
Mark Morgan, City Attorney. I'm here for any legal questions you probably won't have.
Kelly Schmidt, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm here to talk to you about all things parks. We have some exciting projects happening at Chapman Hill and also urban forestry. I'll hand it over to Scott McLean. Look forward to speaking with you.
Good evening, Scott McLean, Assistant Vice Director, and we've got a neighborhood meeting for Chapman Hill, April 10th, just to talk about the project for the summer, and then the following Wednesday, April 17th, we're allowed to meet our first meeting for the forestry management plan, so I'm here to talk to you more about that.
I'm Justin Carlton, IT Director, Information Technology Director for the City of Durango. We support the city in a myriad of technical ways. Happy to discuss any of those. And I brought a security trivia game here with me, so stop on by.
Faye Marmer, City Clerk. We do City Council agendas and administration, all things licensing, elections, and are currently working on implementation of new municipal court software, as well as vacancies on our boards and commissions coming up.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Kling. I'm the Human Resources Director. I'm here to talk job opportunities or any of our employee experiences that we provide for the city.
Hi, I'm Allison Baker. I'm Public Works Director. We cover streets and water and wastewater, trash and recycle, and engineering and project management. So if any technical areas are of interest to you, please stop by and ask some questions. I'd like to introduce a new person joining us tonight. Laura Rick is our new Outreach and Education Coordinator, and she is helping spread the word about infrastructure.
I've been with the city for about 10 years. I was previously at the drinking water treatment plant as an operator and then the chief plant operator there, and just transitioned into this new role for public outreach and education for public works. So really we want to just show and teach everyone what we do, why we do it, and why it's so important.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Hill. I'm the Transportation Director. My department oversees public transit, parking, and our multimodal program. And tonight I'm highlighting the Downtown's Next Step project with some information, and I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Good evening, my name is Zita Fail. I'm the Director for the 911 Communication Center here in Durango. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have about our emergency services and what kind of questions we ask on the phone and how we send you help when you need it.
Good evening, I'm Bob Grammer. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Durango for a little while longer. Here to talk to you about anything policing, but I think the biggest topic that we're going to have this evening is going to be the police chief search, so I'd be happy to answer any questions on that end of it and what our future looks like. So yeah, again, thank you very much for this.
Okay, everybody, feel free to mill about the room, get some food in the back. Thank you so much for attending tonight and giving us your feedback. We appreciate you showing